So today is day 11 in our scripture reading leading up to Easter, and today we return back to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 14, and we're picking up in verse 53. And here we see Jesus, his trials, his mock trials. We began in the Jewish courts and with the chief priests and the elders, and we see Peter there. Remember, Peter was his most faithful disciple, if you will, and Jesus had told him that he would deny him, and Peter's like, no, I won't. And Jesus says, before the rooster crows twice, you'll deny me 3 times. And so we see, even in the story, as Mark's given the narrative of Jesus being led to these Jewish courts, he's also saying, hey, but Peter's hanging out, that Peter's still in the story. And so the court goes on, or the trial goes on, and they have these false witnesses, but their stories aren't lining up, so they really can't find anything to try him with. And so they continue to just get more and more frustrated, and it says that, like I said, all the testimonies wouldn't agree, but Christ was remaining silent, and he wouldn't answer questions. And they finally asked him, the high priest asked him, so are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And he says, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And this they couldn't take anymore. And we see this hostility, and oftentimes we think about Jesus' beatings beginning with the scourging. But when he's leaving the Jewish court, it actually says that they began to spit on him, and they covered his face, and they struck him, and they began to even mock him, telling him to prophesy. And then the guards received him with blows. So here we see Christ is already being beaten within the Jewish courts. And so then we have the story of Peter's denial. The same Peter that in the garden cut the soldier's ear off is now questioned by a little girl while he's still in the courtyard, and he says, I don't know him. I don't know the man. And the scripture says that he left the courtyard and kind of went to the gate. And then 2 more times he was questioned, and ultimately he got furious and actually says that he had invoked a curse on himself and to swear, and he said, I do not know this man of whom you speak. And immediately the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered. One thing that caught my eye as we read, as your reading day, when we get to 15, it says that they bound Jesus and they led him to Pilate. So now he's in the Roman court. So he just left the Jewish court, now he's in a Roman court before Pilate. And we know the story where Pilate can't find anything really to charge him with. And so it being the Passover, and there was a celebration there that, or a tradition that that Pilate would release a prisoner. And so Pilate brings Jesus before the Jews, and he brings Barabbas, who Scripture says that he was a murderer of the insurrection. And we have this incredible story where the crowd gets to choose. And they'd rather choose to free Barabbas or free Jesus, and they choose to free Jesus. And ultimately what we see is this, like even whenever they were trying to lead him and bound him, ultimately they didn't have to do that because he was freely going to go there anyway. And whenever he stands before the crowd with Barabbas on his side, he knew that ultimately the crowd was going to choose to free Barabbas, but ultimately what we see is that it was Jesus taking Barabbas' place. Jesus was being summoned to death so Barabbas, the guilty one, could go free. It's the story of the gospel that he who knew no sin became sin so that we, the Barabbases, can become the righteousness of God. Scripture doesn't say Barabbas became a believer, but the picture there is that the Son of God, the innocent one, took the place of the guilty so that the guilty could go free. And that is the story of Easter. That's the story that we are celebrating and we're looking at as we journey to Easter together through the Scriptures. Y'all be blessed today.